So let's start with a really basic question. How do you really know if the buildings we live and work in are actually safe? Well, a new framework is on the table that wants to fundamentally shift how we answer that, moving us away from just opinion and towards hard, solid proof.
When you look at a building like this, you just assume it's safe, right? It's all held together by this complex web of rules and regulations. But, and this is the big question, what if that system has a fundamental flaw? A new review is asking a really tough question. Is the way we've been doing this for decades even fit for purpose anymore?
At the end of the day, it really all boils down to this. When some expert comes along and gives a building the green light, how on earth do we know they actually got it right? What's holding their judgment accountable? And how do we make sure it's based on solid evidence and not just, their opinion? That's the core problem we're going to dig into. Okay, so before we can really dig into the solution, we first have to get our heads around the core problem with the current system. And the source documents for this proposal, they describe it as a dangerous imbalance.
Think of it like a set of old-fashioned scales. On one side, you've got this enormous weight, the life-critical, subjective judgment of one single person, an assessor. But on the other side, well, the legislative boundaries, the official rules, they're just not heavy enough to balance it out. And what does that mean? It means you can have two different experts look at the exact same building and come to completely opposite conclusions. I mean, that's a system with a serious structural deficit.
And this imbalance, it creates a huge, huge risk. The proposal actually has a name for it: false tolerance. It's basically the danger of a building being labeled acceptable when there's no real evidence to back that up. And look, this isn't about people being malicious. It's about a broken system that just allows for these incredibly inconsistent and frankly dangerous results. So, what's the alternative? Well, it's not some minor tweak. We're talking about completely flipping the logic on its head. So, here's that flip in action. The old question was really subjective, right? Is the risk tolerable? I mean, tolerable to who? But the new question is so much tougher, and it's all about evidence. It asks, is the risk reduced as low as reasonably practicable, a principle known as ALRP? This completely changes the game. It forces the assessor to prove they've done everything they possibly can. The burden of proof just got shifted, big time. Okay, so how does this all work in the real world? Well, the whole thing is built on 6 foundational pillars, and you can think of each pillar as an answer to one of the hardest questions in building safety. This table really lays out the core issues pretty clearly. You can see the big themes. Way too much relies on one person's judgment. There's no mandatory standard for competence, no bright red lines for what's flat out unacceptable. And, crucially, no default rule for what to do when you just don't have the evidence. The 6 pillars we're about to go through, they're designed to plug every single one of these gaps. All right, pillar number 1, the legal line. Now, this isn't about throwing out the old laws. It's actually about making them stronger. It forces us to ask a really critical question. Where does good advice or guidance end? And where do the hard, non-negotiable legal controls begin? It's about drawing a clear line in the sand. Next up, pillar 2, competence. This one sounds simple, but it is absolutely vital. The idea is, if you're gonna make these kinds of life or death judgments, you have to be able to prove you're qualified. So this calls for a mandatory, auditable standard. No more ambiguity. We need to clearly define who actually has the expertise to sign off on a building's safety. Pillar 3 is all about verification, and this is a big one. It basically says, we're done just trusting the drawings. From now on, we need physical proof. It means making opening up the building, literally getting inside the walls, a non-negotiable part of the process. It's about checking what was actually built, not just what the blueprint said should have been built. Now for pillar 4, intolerance. And this one is a total game changer. It's all about creating hard, non-negotiable red lines. If an assessor finds certain specific defects, the conversation is over. Done. Remediation becomes mandatory. There's no more wiggle room, no more debating if it's tolerable, and you can't use cost as an excuse anymore. Okay, pillar number 5, uncertainty. This one requires a pretty powerful shift in how we think. The core idea is that a lack of evidence isn't neutral. It's a massive red flag. So, if the records are missing for, say, one part of a wall, you don't just write it down in your notes. No, you have to treat that entire area as unsafe by default. And it stays that way until you can prove with evidence that it's safe.
I love this way of putting it. Basically, crystal balls are out. This whole framework is designed to stop people from making assumptions just to fill in the gaps. Now, professional judgment is still super important, but it can't be used as a substitute for hard physical evidence. The rule is simple. If you don't have the proof, you can't just guess.
And the process for dealing with this uncertainty is designed to be totally black and white. If an area's records are incomplete, boom, it's flagged as unverified. End of story. And the only way to get rid of that flag is to go in and do a physical investigation. There's no middle ground, no amber light. It's either proven safe or it's considered unsafe. That's it.
And all of this brings us to the sixth and final pillar, which is maybe the most important one of all: trust. Because let's be honest, you could have the most technically brilliant report in the world, but if nobody believes it, what's the point? This pillar is all about making sure that the final assessment is clear, transparent, and something that everyone, from the family living on the top floor to the bank that holds a mortgage, can actually rely on. So there you have it, the 6 pillars. With that foundation in place, the big question becomes, how do we actually build this new, trustworthy future for building safety? And one thing is crystal clear. This isn't a problem that engineers can just solve in a back room somewhere. If we want a system that actually works in the real world, it has to be a collective effort. That means getting everyone around the same table: regulators, lawyers, insurers, and, most importantly, the actual residents who live in these buildings. They all need a voice in shaping the final rules.
And just think about all of the different people who need to have faith in this system. You've got residents and leaseholders who just want to know they're safe. You have regulators who need clear, enforceable standards. You've got lenders and insurers who need the confidence to, lend and insure. And everything has to be solid enough to stand up in court. The system has to work for all of them, no exceptions.
Which kind of leaves us with this one last really powerful question. When you strip it all away, the goal here isn't just about fixing walls and windows. It's about fixing a broken system of trust. So the real test, the ultimate test of this new framework, isn't just technical. It's whether it can rebuild something that's way more fragile than brick and mortar. Can it actually rebuild trust?